descended, plunging the world into apocalypse and chaos as humans turn into zombies. As always, our MC is betrayed by his girlfriend and best friend, but he somehow magically goes back in time to change everything. Along with this, he gets the power to control the flames and a whole prison of evil gods at his disposal. In this prison, time stands still, and he can store food without worrying about it spoiling, and even animals and captives without fear of them escaping or starving to death. Let's find out how it all began. The blood moon rose on top of the ruined city. In the rubble of the broken metropolis, our MC, Xiayan, had been beaten, bloodied, and broken. In the distance, demons wreaked havoc without a single ounce of mercy for the population. Their strong strides and powerful limbs destroyed skyscrapers, tearing through concrete like paper. Under the demons' command was an army of zombies, undead monsters hungry for human flesh. The few survivors tried to run for their lives, desperately clinging to non-existent hope. Our boy was continuously trampled and kicked while he was down, a witch snickering at his misfortune. She then started dousing his wounded body with gasoline, covering every inch. The witch and the caped villain said their sarcastic farewells. While they flaunt their stolen treasure, the caped villain stole the most precious thing that Xiayan owned, the token of the sixth great hell. He looked at the man he considered his best friend as the gasoline painfully stung his open wounds. His only concern was the well-being of his missing little sister. The villain stimulated the token, summoning the power of a monstrous bear that was wearing the skulls of its victims as a necklace. The smug villain confessed that Xiayan's adorable little sister had already been dragged to her miserable resting place for being a nuisance. At least her pure blood was still quite useful for something else. As furious as he was, Xiayan did not have the strength to stand up, let alone fight back. The retreating survivors looked up to the villain with hope. They knew him as Shujun, the strongest ability user blessed by the gods. As Shujun took the witch into his arms and flew away, he left Xiayan with a painful parting gift. A lit lighter aimed to burn him alive. The giant demon continued its destructive advance until it was met with the summoned giant bear. Unchained from its restraints, the gargantuan animal wrestled with the pale demon. It was a full-on kaiju battle. At the same time, Xiayan's body was swallowed by the fiery ignition. He gritted his teeth through the agonizing sensation of his skin being burnt to a crisp as he desperately wished for a do-over. Xiayan vowed that if the afterlife exists, he definitely won't let those who wronged him go unscathed. Fueled by hate and agony, his right eye assimilated with the flames as he heard a playful voice granting him his wish. His heartbeat slowed to a crawl, and with one final pump, the flow of time reversed. The fiery power coalesced in his eye as the physical and emotional pain he felt was imprinted on his soul. Xiayan woke up in the comfort of his own bed, sweating from what seemed like a long and feverish nightmare. The wounds and the burns were gone. Could the voice he heard on the brink of death be real? He rummaged around the bed and found his phone. He saw the date, July 1st, 2028, 3 whole days before the apocalypse started. Putting on a shirt, he ran to the bathroom to sober up and try to make sense of what he just went through. He still could not believe that everything had started over. He felt normal and healthy. The only difference was the change in his right eye. It turned pale gold in color thanks to the fire seed left buried in him as he was burned to death. Xiayan quickly took a moment to calm down and adapted to the situation surprisingly fast. He suited up and went out the door. He took his first steps outside and took in the sights. His neighborhood wasn't necessarily nice to look at, but all of it would look a lot worse 3 days from now. The apocalypse will arrive, and it will turn many humans into zombies, along with the descent of strange gods. Some humans would awaken powers to stand for themselves, but resistance would be ultimately futile. Cities would be turned into hellscapes overrun by demons, with the few survivors fighting for limited resources to survive. His girlfriend, the witch Ruolan, and his best friend, the traitorous Shijun, would betray him without batting an eye. Speaking of the literal devil, Ruolan started ringing him up. Xiayan picked up the phone, and the shrill witch's voice immediately blared. She criticized him for not answering right away, asking if he was trying to break up. Ruolan had always been like this. Whenever something does not go her way, she threatens to end the relationship. In the past, his foolish and pathetic self would anxiously and desperately try to appease her. But now he could not give a single flying fuck. He simply answered, "Sure," confusing the witch. She was expecting Xiayan to beg for forgiveness like a puppy after all. Xiayan doubled down, finally breaking it off with the witch. He's tired of her conniving ass. He does not want to be a glorified servant anymore. He hung up and stashed his phone in his pocket. Gaining some semblance of peace, he locked in. Xiayan knew that he had to hurry up and take care of business with his limited time. Back in Ruolan's home, she angrily threw her phone away after being cut off before she could start cursing Xiayan out. That dog of hers had the gall to hang up and block her so fast. The witch and Shujun just finished a round of smashing pissers. He asked if Xiayan finally found out about their little fling. But that shouldn't be possible. Ruolan had the loser on a leash, never disobeying her orders and demands. Shijun just laughed. He didn't give a shit either way. He was more concerned about the message his old man sent him about collecting some ancient family heirlooms filled with spiritual energy, as something big might happen soon. Ruolan remembered her loser boyfriend talking about a family heirloom token before. She recalled that the ugly, centuries-old artifact is currently owned by Xiayun, Xiayan's sister. Ruolan believed that her dog would always come back to her for forgiveness. At that time, she'll just demand the token. Pleased by her ingenuity, Shijun straddled the witch, and they went for another round of hide the sausage. The token they were just talking about was a poorly maintained slab of antique. Xiayan had rushed over 30 kilometers in a cab to his sister's school to ask for the token, ditching his day job. Xiayun asked what was wrong with his eyes, and he refused to explain. He just asked his little sister if she trusts her big bro. They have been incredibly close since they were young, so obviously she did. The two have always relied on each other growing up. If there is one person that Xiayun would trust unconditionally, it would be her big bro. She knows that everything he does is for her own good. Since that was the case, Xiayan tasked her to pack her things and come with him immediately. She obliged and asked for 2 hours to prepare her stuff. Xiayan wanted to know why she did not even ask for further explanation. Like she said, Xiayun trusted her big bro more than anyone else in the world. He watched as she ran to pack her stuff up. He vowed that this time he would make sure that Yun would be safe and sound. To do that, he will need the family heirloom resting in his palm. All he could remember was Shijun opening some sort of portal and summoning a giant beast using the rusty old thing. He wondered how that snake managed to do such a mythical feat. Suddenly, the fire seed in his golden eye shot out and hit the token's surface. The heat from the fire melted the rusty surface and revealed the token's original form. This is an ancient artifact connected to the Sixth Great Hell. Xiayan was suddenly sucked into a wormhole of sorts, traveling inside the token's separate dimension. The portal eventually spat him out into an entirely different realm filled with perpetual darkness. In the middle of it was a giant tower with countless crimson chains attached in every direction. He could not even find the words to explain what he was seeing. Inside the tower was a plethora of monsters and demons from all sorts of eras, locked up and desperate to get out. They all looked at him with their penetrating glares as he descended to its entrance. The monsters and demons tried to scare him with their snarls and gazes, and it was incredibly effective. Then, a lightning tribulation struck the tower with an ungodly amount of force. The lightning seemingly aimed at the monsters that dared to intimidate Xiayan. Each one of them suffered a painful demise as the destructive power mutilated their grotesque bodies. The destructive tribulation continued to go wild, seemingly connecting to Xiayan himself. A mysterious power was suppressing the monsters in the tower. Right then and there, he heard the same playful voice he heard before his life was snuffed out before time reversed. The mysterious entity's lips curved into a smile, revealing her fangs. Xiayan's guard immediately went up and stared at the humanoid creature in front of him. She introduced herself as Sudaji, a beautiful nine-tailed fox. She extended a respectful greeting to Xiayan, the new Hell's prison warden. You see, tens of thousands of years ago, the immortal emperor gathered 12 immortals, Tai Bai, Tai Shang, the three pure ones, Guanyin, Fuxi, Xuanu, and others, to jointly forge the demon-suppressing tower. The finished product was dubbed the Sixth Great Hell, the nightmare of every evil incarnate out there. Throughout the ages, all sorts of powerful beasts, monsters, and demons were locked away for their grievous sins. In the Tower of Endless Punishment, they suffered the torment of soul-burning heavenly lightning day and night. The pardon token in Xiayan's hand is the only key that can unlock the door to this fearsome place. That's also why Sudaji referred to him as the new warden. Since this was his first time in this place, the fox invited him to go inside and check on his prisoners. She promised to give him a more detailed report of the place as they walked through. Curious and intrigued by what this all meant, Xiayan took her up on her invitation. He walked up to the ominous door as if he had nothing to lose. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by the swift weaving of violent energy bouncing around the first floor. Sudaji warned him to look out and be careful of those dancing waves. As if by instinct, his golden eye lit up as it summoned a seemingly conscious trail of fire that protected him from the malevolent energy. Sudaji was impressed with how efficiently he handled the tower's first surprise. She identified the flame in his eyes as the nether fire seed. It must be the catalyst that made it possible for him to restart his life after death in the underworld. Sudaji also confessed that she contacted him as his life flickered away. The bond between the fox and the Jia family runs deep. She had been the guiding spirit of the Sixth Great Hell for a long time now, and she could not bear to see Yan get killed by pathetic villains. The despair and anger at the moment of death must have awakened his flame ability, igniting the nether fire seed. She barely had to do anything. That's one big question answered. Now that the apocalypse is inching closer once more, he won't be as useless and helpless as he was in the past. This time, he was determined to do everything differently. Itching to learn more about this tower, Xiaoyan asked Sudaji to proceed and lead the way. She explained that the 6th Great Hell is divided into 5 layers. Based on Xiaoyan's soul power, the doors to another floor would light up, representing his current limit. The higher he can go, the stronger imprisoned creatures he can encounter. So, he'll need to increase his soul power fast to face them. Right now, the only section is lit, and the only accessible area is the one on the ground floor. Behind the prison cell was a familiarly terrifying figure. It was the same gigantic beast that Shujun summoned and rode in his previous life. Curiosity got the best of Xiaoyan, and they walked a little too close to the prison cell, waking up the monster as it roared a terrifying war cry. What happened next shocked him to his core. The monstrous beast started acting like a cuddly pet, seemingly pleased to see the new warden of the prison. It praised Xiaoyan for being young and promising. The prisoners of the tower had been waiting for a new warden to arrive for thousands of years after all. The beast even offered its services if Xiaoyan ever needed anything. The shameless black bear even tried to sneak a kiss in before being kicked away by Su Dija for daring to get close to the warden. As it turned out, the fox just wanted to get first dibs on licking Xiaoyan lovingly first. She did not want any competition for the warden's attention. She complained that these 1,000-year-old demon kings had only been imprisoned for a few thousand years and had already turned into attention-hungry dogs. But not everyone was like Black Bear. Some of the prisoners did not approve of the young warden, only relying on his token. The chained-up bird-looking demon would rather get struck by heavenly lightning for another 1,000 years than grovel at the kid. Accounting for Sudaji and the Black Bear demon, it seems like the tower holds an untold number of legendary creatures. Xiaoyan let his eyes wander until they fell on the Black Bear's next-door neighbor. He could see the demon's back, a muscular body with demonic wings attached. The demon turned around, showing its humanoid face with a sharp beak. He recognized the demon from the ancient stories and myths, the thunder god, Lei Genji. Sudaji praised the warden for immediately recognizing another prisoner at a glance. She clarified that in this world, monsters are ranked as soldiers, generals, commanders, kings, sages, and beyond. Since Xiaoyan only had access to the lowest level of the tower, he could only see general-level criminals. The stronger he becomes and the higher he goes, the stronger the prisoners he could encounter. It is said that the topmost layer even held sage-level immortal criminals. Sudaji had heard Lady Nua sigh about how they once held god-level beings in the tower, but they had been lost to the sands of time. The fox urged the young warden to work hard and ascend the ranks to control the entire prison. Xiaoyan was more than just a little overwhelmed by the scale of this responsibility. The tower is more formidable than anything his mind could have imagined. The general-level beasts on the lowest level are already powerful enough to cause ruinous amounts of destruction with their power. The prisoners on the top floor must be world-ending nightmares. But no matter what abomination was locked up on top, they would all just be prisoners under the warden's control in the future. In the coming apocalypse, he has the potential to become the strongest. With his minuscule soul power, this is as far as they can go for now. Xiaoyan would have to absorb a lot more soul power to light up more rooms and ascend. Sudaji also expounded that soul power is different from awakened abilities. Abilities can be strengthened by absorbing crystal cores from zombies and mutants. Soul power, on the other hand, can only be obtained by killing gods. In 3 days, when those deities descend upon Earth, his hunt will officially begin. Before eradicating the gods, he needs to make all the necessary preparations. Xiaoyan found himself in the busy antique street. In his previous life, someone stumbled upon a binding immortal rope from one of the stalls and became a powerful ability user. At this point in time, the treasure should still be for sale on this street. Thankfully, the energy radiating from the antique display cannot escape his nether fire seed. Coincidentally, the head of the Song family and father of Shujun, Song Tian, is also roaming the streets to shop with Elder Huang, his trusted antique appraiser. Song Tian spotted Xiaoyan looking around the stalls, confused that the young man had an interest in the wares. He remembered reminding his son to pick friends that would be useful one way or another, and Shujun assured him that Xiaoyan was just a foolishly loyal guy who was easy to manipulate. Song Tian did not pay the young man too much attention and continued their search for valuable antiques. Elder Huang assured him that with his discerning eyes, they could get a decent haul. It's too bad that most antiques on display are useless. Song Tian just got back from an ancestral worship ceremony where he dreamt of his ancestors telling him to search for ancient artifacts. He did not know what for, but he decided to give it a go. Suddenly, Elder Huang lit up at the sight of a gourd tied to the door of one of the antique shops. The old man immediately ran to snag it for the taking, but someone else had already gotten to it. The shop owner was glad to find another gullible customer he could scam. But that gullible customer was Xiaoyan. The owner spouted some bullshit about the gourd being an artifact from the Ming dynasty. He set the price at 10,000, and Xiaoyan immediately recoiled at such an expensive price tag. The young man pretended to inspect the gourd for any damage or peculiarities. He argued that the gourd had cracks and it was tied with a cheap broken string. Xiaoyan started haggling for the antique, setting his price at 100 yuan at most. The shop owner immediately grabbed the gourd out of his hands and told him to piss off. At that moment, Elder Huang and Song Tian swooped in to inspect the antique for themselves, not knowing that Xiaoyan had already received the treasure for free. It was the shoddy red string tied around the gourd. No one could have thought that the inconspicuous little string would become so valuable in the coming days. It is the magical treasure dubbed as the Binding Immortal Rope. He was only able to spot it thanks to his nether fireseed vision. Quietly tucking the magical treasure in his pockets, he decided to stick around to have a little bit of fun and do a little bit of trolling. In his previous life, his little sister was captured by the Song family after stealing the token. They used her as a blood sacrifice for some twisted ritual. This time, Big Bro is hell-bent on making the whole Song clan pay. Elder Huang verified that the gourd has some faint spiritual aura of ancient origin. He must have sensed the remnant power of the string. Trusting the old man's vision, Song Tian asked for the price of the gourd. Xiaoyan slyly interrupted and called Uncle Song's attention with a polite greeting. Song Tian returned the greeting and made some small talk. The shrewd businessman even brought up the ancient heirloom that Xiaoyan had, saying that he wanted to talk about possibly acquiring it later. In reply to that bold proposal, Xiaoyan raised his voice and name-dropped the wealthy Song Tian as loud as he could to attract everyone's attention. He strongly implied that Uncle Song must be trying to buy something very valuable. With the streets full of enthusiasts trying to strike it rich in Antique Street, a crowd of fanatics quickly surrounded the stall and saw the famous Elder Huang, the appraiser. The hungry hyenas quickly offered a higher initial price than 10,000 for the gourd. Song Tian was irked by the ensuing bidding war, asserting that he found the treasure first. The bid had quickly reached 20,000. The antique enthusiasts drove up the price to 50,000 in the blink of an eye as the shopkeeper encouraged the bidding war to line his pockets. By the end of the brutal auction, Song Tian had to pay 70,000 more than the asking price. He was supposed to get a possible treasure for just 10,000, but ended up overpaying because of Xiaoyan's stunt. The young man stuck around to talk to Song Tian about his family heirloom. Uncle Song remained civil and asked the young man to see the token. He quickly took it out of his pocket and willingly let them see it from afar. Elder Huang could already tell that the token was a real treasure, and he wanted to take a closer look to confirm. Xiaoyan quickly put the token back into his pocket and denied their request for a closer look. Song Tian tried to appeal to the young man's friendship with his son, asking for a favor for his dear old uncle. Xiaoyan asserted that he had nothing to do with Shujun anymore, and if there was nothing else, he'd take his leave. Finally, Song Tian offered compensation for just inspecting the artifact. Xiaoyan took his phone out, showed them his PayPal ID, and asked for 10,000 for a 1-minute inspection. He could give them 5 minutes for a thorough look in exchange for 50,000. Song Tian gritted his teeth and gave in. Bro is just getting scammed left and right. Uncle Song begrudgingly transferred the money over, and the young man tossed the token to Elder Huang. While the suckers were inspecting every nook and cranny of the artifact, Xiaoyan was already busy spending his cash. He ordered an ample stock of water and food. Since there are empty cells in the 6th Great Hell Prison, he could just store his supplies there. Sudaji informed him that any item placed in a separate dimension would remain unchanged. He could even store some live animals there, so she requested some chickens to snack on. She was a fox, after all. He bought so many essential supplies, from raw ingredients to perishables, that the vendors might think he's starting a farm. It did not take too long for him to run out of funds. Money really does run out quickly these days. After 5 minutes, he asked the old-ass duo if they wanted to buy some time extension, but Song Tian was already sold. He wanted to buy the token for himself. When the young man responded that he was open to selling, the old men lit up with glee. But the price point he set was way too much. Xiaoyan started negotiations at 10 million. The glee on their faces just seconds ago vanished. Xiaoyan quickly retrieved the token and asserted that it was an heirloom that had been passed through his family for thousands of years. He believes that 10 million was a fair price, but he was just giving them an unrealistic offer. With that being said, he took his leave. Elder Huang believes that the token was a genuine antique, but it should only be worth around 500,000. The old appraiser believes that he could get the token for 100,000 if they negotiated. But Song Tian was done with reasonable methods. He thanked Elder Huang for his help and asked him to take his leave. The ruthless business mogul called his son, Shi Jun, and ordered him to gather some clan members to find Xiaoyan and his sister. He wanted the token and the siblings in one piece. That brat dared to mess with him for the whole day. As revenge, he would do as his ancestors asked and prepare a young girl's blood for sacrifice. Xiaoyan just happened to be the perfect candidate. Xiaoyan could already tell that Song Tian was plotting his disgusting revenge, This was precisely what he was hoping for. He even regretted not extorting more money from the bastard. Xiaoyan was just getting started with collecting debts for the Song family's transgressions. The young man went straight to his little sister's dorm and found Xiaoyun waiting for him outside. She was all packed and ready to go. He took her luggage, ready to finally head home for the day. Before they could leave, a pretty woman with platinum hair came running in to stop the siblings. She must have run all the way through with how disheveled she looked. This is Bai Xin, Xiaoyun's homeroom teacher. Miss Bai tried to catch her breath and proceeded to ask why Xiaoyun suddenly got up and left school, knowing that there was an important exam the next day, an exam that would be crucial for her future. Xiaoyan introduced himself to the teacher and confessed that he was the one who was pulling her sister out of school for a temporary leave. Miss Bai argued that Xiaoyun is the top student in her class. She knew that the siblings' parents had passed away, leaving Xiaoyan to take care of his sister. Miss Bai expected him to be a responsible guardian, not the type to strain his sister's future. She refused to let her most promising student go without a valid reason. Miss Bai believes that Xiaoyun has a bright future ahead, and the young man is ruining it. The passionate teacher firmly believes that as long as the earth isn't exploding, Xiaoyun should not take this temporary leave for whatever reason. Miss Bai quickly realized that she must have crossed a line with her words, but she was just concerned for her prized student. Feeling bad for intruding on family matters, she still insisted on continuing Xiaoyun's education. Xiaoyan took it pretty well. He thanked Miss Bai for looking out for his sister's best interests. As a token of his gratitude, he gave the teacher some valuable advice. With a serious tone, he asked her to stock up on as much food, water, medicine, and weapons as soon as she could. Most importantly, she should prepare a large supply of painkillers to help her get through the tough times ahead. Miss Bai was surprised at such a grim implication of his advice. It was as if he was saying the world is really going to end in the coming days. Leaving Miss Bai stunned in silence, the siblings went on their way. Back in Xiaoyan's home, Xiaoyun asked his big bro, "What's the plan now that she's here?" She wasn't dumb. She knew that her brother must be preparing for something big that was about to happen. He openly admitted that there would be some drastic changes in the coming days, but swore to protect her with all his might. He fashioned the token into a necklace and made Xiaoyun wear it while he goes out for a bit. He asked her to never open the door for anyone, no matter what. Xiaoyun kept her cheerful attitude, promising her big bro a hearty meal when he came back. The token on her neck would allow Xiaoyan to sense her whereabouts at any time. For now, he needs more funds as soon as possible. Xiaoyan got out of the elevator and noticed that the witch was waiting for him in the lobby. She was on a call with someone, blatantly talking about the siblings with an irate tone. On the other side of the line was that snake, Shujun, telling Ruolan to keep the loser occupied while he and his boys do their thing. Seeing that Xiaoyan had finally shown his face, the witch tried to use her feminine charm and invited him to grab a late-night snack with Shujun, like old times. Xiaoyan doesn't want to waste another breath with this witch, so he just shoves her out of the way. But Ruolan was either extremely persistent, or she just couldn't read the room. She grabbed his arm and asked if they were really breaking up after everything they'd been through. She thought he was just being childishly jealous about something, so she came all the way out here to see him. Xiaoyan pushed her once more. Just the thought that he was ever in a relationship with her is making him sick. He warned her to stay the hell away from him from now on. Ruolan went on the offensive, calling him ungrateful. Her words no longer held any power over the young man. Xiaoyan just exited the building, leaving the conniving witch. Ruolan's ego was shattered, and she quickly reverted to being the demanding waste of space that she was. Xiaoyan waved the deed of his house in the air, telling her that he was going to sell it. The witch panicked. She was expecting to get the place once they got married. She had long since viewed it as their wedding house. Not only is Xiaoyan going to sell it, but he's going to sell it way below market price too. Xiaoyan's behavior just didn't make any sense. He started standing up for himself, and now he's selling a house left by his parents. It's in a prime location, worth at least 3 million. That house was her end goal. That's why she dated him. Quickly thinking on her feet, Ruolan returned to her gentle demeanor and asked how much he would sell the property for. To make the process easier and quicker, he's going to put it up for just 1 million. Ruolan was flabbergasted, thinking that Xiaoyan must be in some sort of trouble and needed to sell the house to pay off debts. The young man continued dangling the prospect of selling such a good property for such a low price in the face of the witch. She wanted to buy it for herself, but she didn't have the funds to do so yet. All she could do was give him 300,000 up front and pay the rest later. That's a no-go though. Xiaoyan's not looking for an installment plan. He wanted 1 million in cold hard cash. Ruolan considered the factors. She knew that Shujun was about to mess with the siblings, and Xiaoyan was as good as dead anyway. Even if the witch gave him 1 million, it'll come back to her. All she needed was to trick him into completing the property transfer. Finally, the witch caved in and agreed to a deal, inviting him to the real estate office ASAP. At the real estate office, Ruolan hopped on a call with her mom to get the rest of the cash, assuring her mother that the money would come back without a fuss. Witch's mom criticized her for dating a broke boy to the point of spending her own money and the family savings to buy his house. The witch nearly cursed her mom out, but she managed to keep it together. She was still thinking that Xiaoyan would be gone for good very soon. Getting impatient, the young man urged Ruolan to hurry up with the payment so he could sign the property over. The witch thought that he was falling right into her financial trap. Little did she know she was falling into his instead. When the apocalypse finally descends, every property on the planet will lose all its value. Without the 1 million in her personal and family savings, Ruolan would have nothing and would lose her last chance at survival. The witch was all smiles as the deal was completed, even inviting him back to the house to celebrate. This time, Xiaoyan did not turn her invitation down. As the sun set, Shujun and his goons walked around the back of the residential building with weapons in hand. Before Xiaoyan comes back, they intend to go upstairs to have a very, very deep conversation with his sister. The poor Xiaoyun was upstairs, diligently preparing a meal for her brother, unaware of what was about to happen. Unbeknownst to her, the token pendant she was wearing on her neck started emitting a strange energy. Soon the group of bandits led by Shijun were right in front of the apartment door. The bastard Shijun knocked on the door and called out to Xiaoyun. He hoped that the girl would open the door for him since he was her brother's friend. Hearing the knock, Xiaoyun went to the door. However, she was in no hurry to open the door even though she recognized Shijun's voice. She said that her brother wasn't at home and asked Shijun why he was here. He laughed in his usual manner and replied that he already knew about it. The bastard began to assure her that her brother had gone to buy ingredients for dinner while he had been asked to return home first. His words seemed very true to Xiaoyun, for she had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side of the door. Unconsciously, she reached for the door to open it. But suddenly she remembered the words of her brother who warned her not to open the door for anyone. Her brother's words instantly made her change her mind because she trusted him more than anyone else. Turning to Shijun, she told him that he would have to wait until her brother returned. Her answer made the bastard furious. His friendly mask evaporated and his tone of voice became irritated. He pretended to be offended because she feared and distrusted him and began to demand that Xiaoyun immediately open the door. But with this behavior, this jerk only made things worse because Xiaoyun only became more convinced that she should not open the door. Realizing that his plan had failed, Shijun decided to go for more drastic methods. One of his friends had already brought a box of tools. They were going to use them to get inside the apartment. For these guys with criminal backgrounds, picking locks was not a new thing, and a lock like this should have fallen in minutes. While his friend was picking the lock, Shijun started to ask Xiaoyun if the symbol of their family belonged to her. Unsuspecting, she replied that her brother had just put it on her. The bastard's question didn't make much sense. His only purpose was to distract the girl while his gang broke the lock. Soon they had indeed succeeded in doing so. The very next moment, a bunch of scumbags with bats rushed inside. Isn't it a bit much to invade the home of a defenseless girl? Next time, they should get a bigger gang to be sure. Then the rest went on as expected. They grabbed Xiaoyun and Shijun started insulting her. He started talking about how it would have been over a lot faster if she'd opened the door first. He felt like a god now, because he had the relic that his father wanted, as well as Xiaoyun's sister. All that remained was to bring that insolent bastard to his knees and make him apologize. After freeing herself from the bastard's grip, Xiaoyun began to ask Shijun why he was doing this. After all, as she thought, he was her brother's friend. Shijun had no intention of hiding anything else. He replied with a crazy smile that he was only friends with her brother because he was a naive fool who was very easy to manipulate. He didn't even hide the fact that he had done many dirty things, which he planned to blame on Xiaoyan. Xiaoyun couldn't believe it, but the reality was cruel. Shijun turned out to be a real bastard who kept bragging about his vile deeds, including his relationship with her brother's girlfriend. His touches were vile, so Xiaoyun demanded to let her go. However, her words only made things worse. In response to her plea, the bastard only slapped her face. He told her not to even think of screaming, otherwise he threatened to gag her with his socks. Shijun's friends were just as scum as he was. They started asking if Xiaoyun was the proper age, to which he replied that they could check it out for themselves. Who knows what might have happened next if it wasn't for someone's sudden laughter. Its owner turned to the guys and asked if they had ever heard of the wine lake and meat forest. Immediately after these words, the surroundings seemed to magically begin to change. Just a couple of moments later, the guys found themselves in a lake with a bunch of beautiful girls. The atmosphere was so beautiful that they didn't even have any questions about how they got here. It was literally a heavenly place. At least it would seem so at first glance. The girls kept hugging them and giving them meat and calling them kings. When asked if they liked the meat, the guys said it was incredibly delicious. Nothing seemed to portend trouble, but suddenly the atmosphere changed, and a white-haired girl with a wry smile said that the meat they were eating was their own. Right after that, all the girls suddenly disappeared and the water in the lake became blood-colored. The haughty smiles on the bastards' faces changed to fear and terror. The paradise place they were in had turned into a real hell. Sudaji, who had created all this on purpose, asked if they didn't like the menu. While these wretched bastards' minds were imprisoned in the world of illusion, in the real world, they were writhing in agony. They didn't even realize that their punishment had just begun. Xiaoyan only watched from the sidelines, not realizing what was happening. Finally, the bastards came to their senses, scared to death of seeing the ghost. But they still couldn't understand where the illusion ended and reality began. Shijun was holding up better than the others, but he also didn't understand where the ghost illusion came from. He and his gang had killed many innocent souls, but now for the first time they felt fear and hesitation in front of this little girl. Then the idea came to him that the reason could be this strange token. Shijun took it out and started yelling at it, calling it broken old trash that couldn't kill him in any way. But the power contained within the heirloom token thought otherwise. A clawed paw appeared from the token, and quickly made Shijun realize who the trash really was by leaving deep cuts on his face. The bastard immediately screamed in pain and let go of the token, which immediately rolled across the floor. It finally fell right at Xiaoyan's feet. Our hero picked it up and went into his apartment. He returned just in time to watch the wretched criminals in person and punish them properly. The Shijun gang immediately realized how much trouble they were in. But then the witch Ruolan appeared, demanding an explanation of what was going on. As soon as she saw the injured Shijun, she rushed over to him. The rest of the gang began to come to their senses, and Shijun ordered them not to let our hero leave with the treasure. Xiaoyan only had time to warn her brother to be careful. Confident in their numerical advantage and bats, the bastards moved forward. Attacking all at once, they hoped to win quickly, but our hero stood still. He wasn't afraid of these losers at all. However, there was a problem that Sudaji had told him about. The Raven General used his power to strike Shijun's face with his claw, but he did so without Xiaoyan's permission and used up all of his token power. The Bear General was upset that he couldn't appear and show his power, but our hero was only happy about it, because if he had shown up, the house would have definitely been destroyed. This apartment is too small a stage for such powerful creatures. Their turn will come later. He could easily deal with such a bunch of losers with his own strength. Shieyan didn't even have to lift a finger to send flames directly at these scumbags. The burning thugs didn't realize what was happening. This was the first time they had encountered such an incredible power. It was as if the fire was intelligent, for there was nothing burning in the room except the thugs themselves. The flames were incredibly hot, and no matter how hard they tried rolling around on the floor, they couldn't put it out. Even water couldn't put out the flames, no matter how much these losers looked to it for salvation. The flames were only extinguished when they fell dead. This was the first time Shijun and Ruolan had seen such a thing, and they were even at a loss for words. Now the main bastard Shijun was truly afraid for his own skin. He had no idea that Xiaoyan could use magic. The frightened witch Ruolan begged Xiaoyan to stay away from them, and instead remember that Shijun was his best friend, and she was his girlfriend. Our hero was in no mood to show mercy to such trash. Shijun dared to come to his house, took his sister as hostage and tried to steal a token, and Ruolan the disgusting witch had acted to distract and delay him. Just looking at them made Xiaoyan simply sick, and they still dare to reminisce about their old friendship. Shijun stood up and started to play the most innocent person in the world who doesn't understand what Xiaoyan is talking about. At the same time, he quietly whispered to Ruolan to go and distract our hero since she was his girlfriend. Shijun himself took out a knife behind his back, and continued to tell how he couldn't wait to be the best man at Ruolan and Xiaoyan's wedding. Ruolan started to play along with him and asked our hero to marry her. She was even ready to forgive him for having nothing. Isn't that true love? The only thing she wanted to know was how he got such power, and then she would love him forever. At first, it seemed like her spell had worked, and Shijun saw it as an opportunity to make a sneak attack. But it was all useless. Xiaoyan could easily see their real intentions through the cheap game. Therefore, he was ready to deal with them right now. A stream of flames from his eye captured the rotten couple and made this world a little cleaner before the apocalypse. Watching the flames, our hero thought about why he got this power and realized why. All to purify this world of filthy creatures like Shijun and Ruolan. He will scorch all such filth from the face of this planet. Meanwhile, at the Song family's family estate, their entire clan gathered together to witness the clan leader address the ancestors. Song bowed before the altar and began to ask the ancestors to bless and help his family, so that their wealth would become limitless. The spirit of the ancestors appeared from the altar and demanded ancient spiritual artifacts and the girl's blood in return. The pitiful ancient flask that Mr. Song had bought so dearly did not satisfy the spirit at all. Ancestors wanted a real sacrifice and real artifacts. Mr. Song began to promise that there is nothing to worry about. In just a few minutes, Shijun should arrive with the girl and the artifact. But the spirit was simply furious that he had to wait with such ungrateful descendants. Even so, he had a message for them. The end of the world, a worldwide apocalypse, is coming in 3 days. It sounded incredible to Mr. Song, but he could not doubt the words of the ancestor spirit. Therefore, he immediately called out to his clan, urging them to immediately send all their manpower and resources to buy up water and food in large quantities. If what the ancestor spirit said was true, the end of the familiar world would come very soon. Song also sent his assistant to quickly find Shijun and his captives. They need to make a sacrifice as soon as possible. However, no one had time to even move when the estate's gate shattered into pieces. Xiayan epically entered the scene and brought with him a piece of trash called Shijun. Now Mr. Song could not worry about him not showing up. There was one thing though. Shijun arrived in the wrong state, but our hero came to this hornet's nest by himself. Mr. Song was shocked to see his son in such a state. He couldn't even imagine how a loser and poor man like Xiayan dared to do such a thing to his son, and then come to the family estate, destroying everything in his path. Song immediately ordered the clan to kill this insolent guy. A dozen bandits immediately rushed towards our hero. Xiayan could only laugh at their foolishness. He closed his eyes, while preparing a fiery greeting for them, and when he opened his eyes again, flames burst out. Xiayan tagged each bandit with a mark, and after that, nothing could save them anymore. So our hero went through their lines without any problems, and the flames hit only those who tried to stop him. Now he was left alone with the frightened Song, who immediately lost all his arrogance. Behind Xiayan, the remnants of the gang were squirming in the flames, and our hero was about to make the main villain pay. But even cornered and scared to death, Song wasn't about to give up. He had one last hidden trump card up his sleeve, a gun, and he was going to use it without a doubt. However, just as he pulled the trigger, Xiayan used his flame control ability and blew up the gun right in the villain's hand. Mr. Song was injured in 2 hands at once. Our hero only laughed at him, saying that he shouldn't have played with gunpowder. Xiayan himself couldn't get enough of his strength. Even though he was of a low level, Void Fire gave him incredible abilities. With it, he could simultaneously control 10 flame sources with a volume of up to 10 square meters. But if there were explosives nearby, it could be even more. While our hero was thinking, Song used this moment to reach the altar and seek the help from the ancestors. The ancestor spirit couldn't allow the Song family's last heir to be destroyed. Therefore, it used its flame power to attack Xiayan. The power of this flame amplified by the evil spirits was so great that even our hero couldn't do anything. He even received substantial damage and was forced to retreat a little. At the same time, the wounds of Mr. Song and the rest of the clan members were healed. Now he had regained his confidence in himself and the strength of his ancestors again, and began to promise a very quick death for our hero. But how it will actually work out, we will find out in the next part. Don't miss it.